Thanks. There seems to be more unilateral U.S. sanctions against North Korea on the way. The Treasury's going to announce them tomorrow. Have you given up on getting China to agree to an oil embargo?
We've not given up, and let me say this with China, we continue to talk with them. First, to ensure that they are fully committed to implementing all the UN sanctions, and they have assured us they are, which, as you'll recall, the last round of sanctions imposed a pretty severe restriction on the import of finished products, so fuels, petroleum, diesel, jet fuel, and whatnot. But we have suggested to them, look, you control that oil pipeline that feeds their refinery. You can do that unilaterally on your own if you want to increase that pressure. Whether they're doing that or not, we don't know, and it's very difficult for us to know whether they're taking actions to curtail oil supplies to them.
Secretary, earlier today, President Trump said that the Treasury Department is going to be announcing additional sanctions tomorrow. He described it as a very large one, the highest level of sanctions. Can you give us any insight into what those additional sanctions may be?
Well, I'd like to leave it to Treasury to announce those tomorrow. They're similar to sanctions we've taken in the past. We're just going out much more broadly now to more entities. But I'd like to leave it to their announcement tomorrow and not jump the gun on them.
And do you all see today's announcement as more symbolic or as something that really does have a lot of teeth to it?
Well, I think it is very symbolic on the one hand, because it just points out again what a rogue regime this is and how brutal this regime is and how little they care for the value of human life. So I think if in that in of itself, I think makes a strong statement of just the nature of this regime. And as I've said, the practical effects may be limited, but hopefully we're closing off a few loopholes with this.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mara Eliason from NPR. If China does not agree to cut off oil shipments to North Korea, how can you possibly get enough pressure on them to come?
Well, their fuel supplies are already quite constrained, and as I said, we have evidence that there are fuel shortages in North Korea. Obviously, the civilians are by and large the ones that can't get fuel, so we see long lines of vehicles at petrol stations. We see certain petrol stations that appear to be out of fuel because they're closed when normally they'd be open. So there are indications that fuel supplies are already quite tight. As you know, they only refined a small amount of their fuel needs internally. They only have one refinery that operates, and it operates at a low capacity. So they were heavily dependent on imports of finished fuel products, which have been constrained significantly with the UN sanctions.
But is the Chinese action essential? In other words, do you need China to cut off those oil shipments?
I don't know that the cutting off of oil is the magic wand or the silver bullet that is going to bring them to the table. What I would say is that the North Koreans have demonstrated in the past they have an enormous capacity to withstand a lot. They'll make their people pay, but they have an enormous capacity to withstand a lot. So I don't want to suggest that we think that one action is all it would take to get them to the table.
Margaret. Thank you. Margaret Howell with Bloomberg. Thanks for welcome. Our briefing room anytime. I want to pick up on Olivia's question about the assassinations. How determinative was that in the specific evidence that you used to make this determination? And I also want to ask you, I think you and Ambassador Haley both spent some time with the president, and that's unusual. I know she was in town today. Can you tell us a little bit about that meeting and any substance that came up there?
Well, on the assassinations, the assassination in Malaysia was a significant event that caused us to really begin to look carefully at what else they might have been doing. As you know, that assassination involved the use of a chemical agent, a very dangerous agent, in a public place, and so that really got our attention. One of the things that we wanted to ensure is that we had a sufficient certainty around their role in that particular assassination. So we've been working with Malaysian authorities as well and been in conversation with them. Wanted to let them have their own process obviously play out as well. With respect to Ambassador Haley and I, we were just both in the cabinet meeting today.
With the threats, I know, without getting too much into it, that there had been a suggestion from the North Korean media about some violence directed toward the U.S. president. Was that a determinative factor at all in the decision to make a designation?
No.
Secretary,